Brené Brown. She did a TED talk that got quite famous, in which she spoke about the power of vulnerability. It's 13 years old at least, and it has 21 million views. It seems like, which is a lot. That is a lot of views. And she got really famous by giving this talk. And yeah, I remember listening to it, several years back. It has had ripple effects. I think, for example, one ripple effect that I've seen is Robert Keegan's. He's a professor at Harvard who is, a psychologist and into organizational development. And he has written a book called An Every One Culture. Deliberately developmental organizations, not not a sexy title perhaps, but the first chapter in it is dedicated to that this very topic of the power of vulnerability, and he references Brené Brown. And in the corporate environment, he maintains that we tend to do two jobs. One job is, what we are assigned to do, the actual tasks of the work that we do, and the other job is to kind of it's an implicit job. It's not in a work description, but where you play political games, try to avoid being seen doing, making mistakes, trying to cover up your mistakes, trying to look from the better, almost like a date, trying to look from your better than you actually are. And and he maintains that those things hinder learning and development, because if we're not open and honest about our mishaps, mistakes, then we will not learn, of course. Maybe we learn for ourselves to some degree, but for example, they have this thing in some of them called a backhand, reference to tennis, and your backhand is usually not your best unless you're, Andre Agassi or someone. Your backhand isn't the best. Your forehand tends to be the best. And everyone has a backhand, if it's public speaking, or if it's, being on time, or if it's being organized, or if it's, being creative, or, daring to speak up, or whatever it is. We have a backhand, and if we don't address it, we don't get better at it, of course. So in these deliberately developmental organizations, they all are required to have a backhand, and it's supposed to be open, and they are discussing it, and they get feedback on it, and things like that. And to do that, in order to do that, they need to be honest. And again, back to the first chapter of the book, it was some years I read it, but they speak about this power of vulnerability, because being open with your misgivings, with your mishaps, with your mistakes, with your fears, essentially, too. We have fears of we maybe avoid public speaking, or we do it in a contrived way because we are afraid. So we do it, we tense up and avoid it completely, or we just, look in our notes, and it becomes unbearable both to do it and to watch it. So not a good mixture. But if we are honest with ourselves and admit that we are afraid of public speaking, which most of us are. I remember Jerry Seinfeld's joke he did, in the I'm Telling You for the Last Time tour, also more than 13 years ago, in which he referenced, where people are to say, what are their biggest fears, and people put public speaking over death. So they're more afraid of public speaking than death in general. which made Jerry make the joke that at a funeral, funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. So, and that's funny, and it's also true, but it's weird too, right? I mean, you'd rather be dead than giving a speech because we're so afraid of it. It has evolutionary roots, that kind of fear. But yeah, so if we admit it, that is the first step in the 12-step program for people with addictions and things like that. We have to admit it, that we are addicted to, not feel our fear, not admit our fear, and move away from things that scare us. Reminds me of the 5 slogans by, I think it is, I've seen different different people getting the clout for it, but Machig Labdron is someone I've seen a couple of times, a Tibetan tantric Buddhist practitioner and a yogini, which means that she's a woman. And I'm just reading a Vajrayana practice of Chud. So it's a Vajrayana. So we have, that's a tantric Buddhist Tibetan school, and it's Chud, the Chud school. I really like the Chud school. I have like a book here with about dream yoga, which is prevalent in the Chud school. Is it? No, maybe I think of the Bun tradition. Sorry. The Chud, the Chud, they have this feeding your demons and other things. Okay, I made a mistake there. So I'm admitting it though, and I'm also feeling that shame, or being maybe flustered or something because I made a mistake. And those things make us not learn to some extent. And instead of being honest about it, which is hard, of course. I mean, for me too, it doesn't feel good to, might have felt better to kind of sweep it over to some extent, or cover it over, which is, of course, fine. You do whatever you want. It's just that it's not recommended, neither by Brené Brown, nor Robert Keegan, nor Machig Labdran, who says that, basically confess. She has these 5 slogans. Confess your hidden faults, and that's the one that we should give heed to today, or the one we are giving heed to. And the other ones are, we can just read them too, because they're good slogans. Very, very, very good. Approach what you find repulsive is the second one. Help those you think you cannot help, sometimes translated as those you do not want to help. Okay, help those you don't you think you cannot or don't want to help. Anything you're attached to, give that away. Maybe we can say, go to the places that scare you. That is also in accordance with this. If the place that scares you is public speaking, you should go there. And it's, of course, also what modern psychotherapy is about to a large extent, which is exposure. Exposure therapy is so prevalent now, especially in the cognitive behavioral therapy domain. So we and there's more to it than just doing what you're afraid of, but doing it in a systematic way and following it up and having psychoeducation and all those things, which makes up cognitive behavioral therapy. But it's a core element. it's one that they themselves really press on, which is exposure. So confess your hidden faults. It is exposing ourselves. We are being truthful. We are exposing ourselves. We're being honest. And yeah, that of course takes me to my favorite quote, maybe favorite quote of all time, could be. And in the Gospel of Thomas, or Thomas, it's not the biblical canon, but it is one of these Gospels that were later found. He says that if you bring forth that which is within you, what you bring forth will save you. And if you do not bring forth that which, or what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. So it is basically, in a lot of ways, saying the same thing. Confess your hidden faults. Be vulnerable. Dare to be vulnerable. And in terms of organizational culture and organizational deliberately developmental organizations, it's good for them, basically. So that's a simple way of putting it. But if you have people who are open with their faults and mistakes, yeah, you can learn from it. They themselves can also learn and develop. Because if all we do is cover up and try to avoid those things, and if there's a culture that isn't conducive to those types of behaviors, of course we won't have it. And that's how, most organizations are, to some degree. Robert Keegan also claims that the energy that goes into this other job, which is, covering up, playing political games, those kinds of things, is for many people almost as much energy that goes into doing the actual job, which is insane, of course. But on the flip side, when seeing the glass as half full, we can see that it's half of it is full of doing these negative behaviors, and we could make it full, totally full, by having all the energy going into, more meaningful stuff, and not having a lot of energy just being wasted on nothing. Yeah, I just had to sigh from that, because that's what we have in a lot of organizations, and also in our daily lives. That is the ego, of course. The ego is constantly trying to manipulate other people's, version of us. And it's trying, and we are, trying to look from our best sides, if it's on a date or if it's talking to someone, or just trying to be seem really intelligent and smart and loving without, it's showing that we are trying to do that. We're just being that. We're these spiritual beings who are just loving. It's our nature. We all have that in different ways and to different extents. We're all on that continuum. At least I am. But this is definitely a lesson for me, and throughout the years, it has become increasingly true for me to actually be honest with myself, be honest with others, and also just having found what Brené Brown says, that there's a power of vulnerability. But it's almost like this tale about, or it's not a tale, more like a saying, that you can't trick, there are these tricksters out there, maybe on the, on the marketplace. There are these guys with who wants you to tell which cup things are under, and it's a trick. And there are other people, doing different kinds of tricks. And they say that it's really hard to trick an honest person, because at least one way of thinking about it is that the people going there are also kind of, trying to get something, trying to trick the other person, or trying to see through the trick, or doing these things. Whereas the honest person is more just not doing that, not trying to gain anything, not trying to not to gain anything. That's almost like the Taoist from the Tao Te Ching, doing not doing, Wu Wei, the Book of the Way, Tao Te Ching. When we are open and transparent, there's nothing to really hang on to for the trickster. That's the same thing for the trickster in our own minds, the ego. That is, if we are open and vulnerable and even loving towards the ego is, what does it have to cling on to? There's nothing. There is literally nothing there. There's nothing to hold on to. It's just a joke. It's just a figment of imagination, of course. When we wake up to it, the path leading there, though, tends to take a while, and it doesn't end just because you had, awakenings or realized things. It comes back in different ways. But the way is through honesty, through integrity, through vulnerability too. It is a power in that, and also not just tricksters on the streets. It is also, I would say, at least, being with anyone. If you are, to me at least, my own experience is when you are fully honest and vulnerable, it's like people sometimes, I don't know, maybe I'm making too much out of it. But from my own experience is that when people feel you, not being triggered, not being, maybe not like crying or all over them, that could be an expression, but it's more this being truly authentic in a way that I don't really like that word, but I think you know what I mean. Being authentic, being vulnerable, there's nothing there again to hang on to. There's nothing to be in opposition to. So, because you don't want anything from them. You're just being a true expression. No one is angry at a tree for being a tree. It's and, a small child. Of course, people can get irritated if but they tend to not be. And same with animals, because they're just being themselves. There's no egoic mind there. There's nothing wanting anything from them. It's just a natural, true expression. And being truly vulnerable, to my mind at least, is being that thing because it is transparent. It is vulnerable. It is open. It's no trigger, no trigger warning. I don't know. No, nothing there. It's just a true expression. And there's a power to that. Yeah, it is a power. You would think maybe that if someone, and of course that can happen too, people can take advantage of some things. But if you're being truly honest and truly vulnerable, you, I think at least, I mean, you do whatever floats your boat. But in my experience, what I've seen is that you will move through life like a hot knife cutting through butter. It is just like Jesus with if you bring forth that which is within you, what you bring forth will save you. And it's not just that it will save you, it will open up the world for you. It will open up everything. That is my experience, and it's really difficult. It's really scary. And we have to take, like Robert Keegan also speaks about, taking baby steps. We don't need to. We can do whatever we want, but that could be one way of doing it, and just trying it out, see how it works. Trying to be honest, maybe with ourselves, maybe with a partner, friend, coworker, whatever, and being vulnerable and see what happens. in my experience, it leads to better relationships, better workplace relations, and people are affected by it in a positive way. And those who don't like it, they won't confront you. They will just walk away because it's unbearable for them, because they can't be in that themselves. But there's nothing there to be in opposition to, because there's total transparency when you're, I mean, maybe I'm being a bit absolute, but yeah, I think to some extent to a large extent, that is actually true. Yeah.